So hello everyone and welcome to AmeriCorps VISTA. We are super excited to be with you as you start your service, your first day, and glad to have you joining this webinar. My name again is Chris Hawks.
Hey everybody, and my name is Barbara Reynolds, and I am Chris's co-pilot for today's webinar. We are both coming from you from Chile VISTA headquarters in Washington, D.C. You may also see, or you will see on your screen as well, that two of our colleagues here at headquarters are in the chat with us today and also managing and responding in the Q&A. Those colleagues are Khadija Carr as well as Brittany Madison. And as Chris said, we are all excited to be joining you guys today, and we'll all be keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A as we go through our presentation today to kick you off and to get started on today's webinar. So here is our agenda. As with last week, we have some kind of critical information we really want to highlight for you, and then some material we're looking to reinforce. So you may hear us say things that you heard last week or that you have read in your onboarding work. So for today, we're going to talk a little bit about how VISTA began in the 1960s. We're going to look at a few key pieces of your orientation, those phases of your VISTA orientation that we started talking about last week. We're going to look at your VISTA assignment descriptions, again, review important resources we want to make sure you're aware of, and wrap up today by officially swearing you into federal service. So lots to do today. As with last week, we have a number of objectives as we go through the agenda I just talked through. Obviously, we asked you to take your precious time today on your first day to log on to this live webinar so that we in VISTA can connect with you and to be of use to you in a live, in-person way. We want to make sure that you guys also are aware of each other. We want to, as much as we can, help simplify some of the complexity of getting started as a VISTA. As I mentioned, we really want to reinforce and emphasize some very timely and important items for you. We're going to look a little bit at your service year, and then as we said, one of our big objectives today is to get you officially sworn in so that you're in the VISTA world. So that is it. Chris, you want to kick us off?
Definitely. So yes, as Barbara mentioned, we definitely want to reiterate, it's a pleasure to welcome you all officially to VISTA and wish you a very happy first day of service. First up on our agenda, as Barbara just referenced, we're going to take a look at a few milestones in VISTA's history that have led us all to this moment. So VISTA at its core is a program that builds economic opportunity to end poverty in all of our communities. If you believe that we have a responsibility to bring an end to poverty, and if you are committed to working with your community to do so, then you are absolutely in the right place. The VISTA program was born out of the civil rights movement and the war on poverty in the mid-1960s, and social equity and economic opportunity remains our mission. Our first volunteers were assigned in 1965, and those volunteers served in Appalachia and Hartford, Connecticut, and also in the camps of migrant farm workers in California. At the VISTA program launch, President Lyndon Johnson said to those first VISTAs, "The initials of your organization spell VISTA. It is an appropriate name, for you will be opening up new vistas of hope for the poor, achievement for yourself, and greatness for your nation." Here on this slide, you see the VISTA program structure that we actually looked at during last week's webinar. You can see the CNCS headquarters on the far left with the CNCS regional offices next. So this is how the structure looks today. In the regional offices, CNCS awards VISTA projects to sponsoring organizations, which is that third little house image in the slide. And those sponsoring organizations are nonprofits that tackle poverty in a variety of projects in diverse communities. So let's take a look at the sponsoring organizations. As of June 2019, there are 832 sponsoring organizations managing 849 VISTA projects. Together, the sponsors and project staff placed VISTA members at over 5,000 service sites in the past year. Of those service sites, about 15% represent rural communities and 85% represent urban communities. It's very important to know that there are different types of VISTA project structures. Some projects place all VISTA members at a single nonprofit. These are what we call single site projects. By contrast, about 16% of projects place VISTA members at multiple sites or offices. But there's a third project model, which is called an intermediary as well. And that's an organization that manages all the administrative aspects of the VISTA award and subcontracts with more than one nonprofit organization to recruit, to train, and manage VISTA members at multiple locations, sometimes all throughout the country. The project models are important because they have a huge impact on every aspect of your VISTA service. And we want to get a sense of the type of projects represented today on this webinar. Are you serving in a single site project, a multi-site project, or through an intermediary? So should see a poll pop up. It may have already popped up, and we just ask you to take a couple seconds to complete the poll. There's also the option of not sure if you aren't sure. We'll give it about another 5 to 10 seconds. Looks like the answers are coming in quickly. And majority at single site, right, Barbara? And then it's kind of even throughout. Multi-site, intermediary are at about 13 and 12% respectively. Yep. And a solid 20% at not sure. And at this point, we want to make clear, you may not know the answer. So that not sure answer is totally fine. It's your first day of service. If you aren't sure, we definitely encourage you to add this to your list of questions for your supervisor this week, and make sure you are completely aware of the project design, the staffing structure, and organizational requirements.
Great, thank you. So as you guys know, our mission is to strengthen organizations that alleviate poverty by mobilizing volunteers and resources, right? Pretty straightforward mission statement. To support this mission, there are 4 key program principles that apply to all VISTA service. And you can see these coming up on the slide in front of you now. First of course, is ending poverty. Every VISTA project and every VISTA member aims to end or alleviate poverty one person, one family, or one neighborhood at a time, and in all kinds of different ways. VISTA members also live among and involve community members in planning and carrying out projects. This is often facilitated by your VISTA project sponsors, and then we all collectively work together to strengthen and improve communities in a variety of ways. This is definitely the VISTA program's long-term goal through learning about values and beliefs and then applying good community development principles to support communities around the country. The third principle, of course, is creating sustainable solutions. You know, you've definitely heard me and Chris talk about this, and you've probably seen it in writing as well. We will for sure talk a lot about sustainability today because our goal, really one of our key principles, is that whatever you do, whatever you develop or create during your VISTA service, whether it's a process, a system, or other type of resource, we hope that you'll do it in such a way that folks will be able to use them and kind of pick them up and take them on and take them over once your VISTA service ends. So that sustainable solutions piece for us is really important. And then finally, of course, building capacity. You guys know, and we will highlight this as well today a little bit more, that all VISTA members particularly are charged with building the capacity of their projects to serve those community needs. And that can mean actually working to increase the size of your project. It could mean increasing the number of people who are served in the community, served by the project. It could mean your VISTA service focuses on improving the efficiency of a particular project, or it could mean that your activities in some other way improve your VISTA project's impact in the community. So these are a variety of ways, I guess, to look at building capacity. These are the ways that we define capacity and how we think and talk really about evaluating the success of our projects and the work of our VISTA members. I'm going to take a few minutes now to hear from you in the chat. So to see you, I guess, would be the better language than to hear from you. I'm going to ask you in the chat to type in answers to these questions. And you can see this question on the slide in front of you. So of these 4 key principles that I just mentioned briefly, which of these resonates most with you? Does one resonate most with you? And if so, why? And this, again, in the chat, if you could just type in a sentence or 2, it doesn't have to be a whole lot of information, but just to give us a sense of where your head is at when you're hearing these key principles. Maybe for you, looking at this list of principles, first up is ending poverty. Before, as we were getting started today, as we were getting started on last week's webinar, we know a lot of folks talked about the poverty in your community and how important it is for you personally as your mission to help end that. So that could be your connection. For empowering communities, I know for a lot of people that very broad and very powerful concept is really important. So working with your stakeholders to help engage your community in identifying needs, that could resonate with you. Just creating those sustainable solutions may be something that's of particular interest and really gets your ears pricked up for that. Could be that you have an eye for developing processes and developing them and creating and institutionalizing them, and that's a key principle for you. That's awesome. And or, finally, capacity building itself may be something that draws you in and really speaks to your heart. Helping organizations be better and be stronger at what they do may be something that really resonates with you. So just want to, again, give a few more seconds. I know I saw, as I was talking, a number of folks were typing into the chat, typing in your answers to these questions. I really appreciate that. Lots of folks identifying empowering community. Agreed, Keegan, I think I see you say that empowering the community is really key to ending poverty. Agreed. I think ending poverty, is this an achievable goal in this country? Asia, I think that was your question, and I asked that myself. I think it is the journey and the fight that we're on to end poverty, and certainly we won't accomplish that ourselves, just the 300 of us, and we probably won't accomplish that, I think it's fair to say, in the next year. But I think being on the journey and striving to end poverty, I think that is the mission, and that is absolutely, certainly when I look at these principles, that for me is the calling, and that's the one that resonates the most. Yep, I see, I think someone indicated that building the capacity so that you can work yourself out of a job as a VISTA, that's a great phrase, and I would echo that and give snaps to that wholeheartedly. I think that is and that's really hard to do, right? It's hard for you to get yourself started, get your project going, and then work yourself out of it in a year. It's a lot going on. Yep, I see a lot more empowering communities, creating sustainable solutions. So thank you guys. Thanks for all of you who've typed in. If you're typing right now, keep it coming. I definitely see Asia, I think, again, is commenting about the fight against poverty. So please, if there are other comments you have, if you want to keep answering these questions, please do so. We are going to, I would say these questions about where are you, where's your head at, around these principles and why, I think those are really key discussion points and key reflection points for us today. I know Chris and I will come back to this in a number of different ways. So let's narrow ourselves just a bit to focus on capacity building and what it looks like, because I do know, having worked with VISTAs and been involved with AmeriCorps for a long time, that it can be difficult to articulate in a way that's compelling and clear and kind of jazzy, if jazzy is the right word, but in a way that's really comprehensible to people who don't speak AmeriCorps. Capacity building can be a hard concept to define and describe to others. And so one thing we want to do today, we think it's really important that we all share a common understanding about what we mean, so what VISTA means when we talk about building capacity or capacity building. So to do that, we come at this in a number of different ways. You guys know by now, you've looked in your couple of tutorials that you completed before today that there's capacity building is such a focus and such the heart of work for VISTA members, and that members should really focus on this as opposed to providing direct service as the kind of bulk or the main focus of your work. This capacity building focus really is a unique aspect of the VISTA program, and that's not to say that other AmeriCorps members in other programs don't build capacity, because they absolutely do. What I think is important and what we really want to keep in mind for VISTA is that it's actually the lion's share of what you do, right? Your overwhelming role in your project, in your community, is a capacity builder. So on the slide now, I think you can see a couple of clear distinctions just to differentiate what we mean here, right? So as I said a few moments ago, when we, VISTA, talk about capacity building, we're talking about VISTA service activities that help your project or help an organization increase their reach, improve their efficiency, scale up, so serve more people or provide more services, and or be more effective. So in some ways, right, we all kind of circle around these concepts when we're talking about capacity building. On the other side of the screen, you can see direct service, which I think is a straightforward term. It isn't a complicated concept. But it is important, I think, to clearly differentiate what AmeriCorps members do when they provide direct service, like tutor, mentor, prepare meals or serve meals, counsel students or counsel adults. Those are direct service activities, if that makes sense. So hopefully you can see the kind of organizational support, capacity building focus, and then that tangible assistance provided directly to those in need, which is direct service. So we're going to take just a few minutes to make sure that you have a good feel for what we're talking about here. And we're going to do that live now. As I said, this is such an important concept. But we're going to have a quick round of this or that to ask you to explore the differences between capacity building and direct service. So for this activity, much like our activity last week about what's allowable and what's not, what's prohibited and what's not, we're just going to ask you in the chat when we present the scenarios to you to just indicate what you think. So cast your vote, if you will, in the chat by typing in CB or DS. You can also just type in C or D, whatever is easy for you. All right, so first up, what do we have?
First up, recruiting volunteers to build houses. So again, as Barbara mentioned, please indicate whether you think this is capacity building or direct service with just a C or a D or a CB or DS in the chat. We see them coming in quite a bit.
C and N, maybe that's for neither. Nope, not going to answer you.
Yeah. We'll give it a few seconds so everyone can answer. Right now, it looks like majority capacity building as a response, but seen a good share of DS in there, yeah. Give it another couple seconds. Want to make sure everyone gets a chance to answer. I know there's might be a lag with so many people typing it in at the same time. Okay, well, the correct response here is capacity building. So majority of you got that correct. And this is because in this scenario, you are not directly building the house. You are developing capacity by recruiting volunteers who will then be able to do the construction work as well as engage with the organization in other ways. Recruiting volunteers is a big part of what a lot of VISTAs do throughout the country.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next up, we have a different type of activity to get your vote on. How about delivering meals to senior citizens or people with disabilities in their homes? What say you good people? Is this capacity building or direct service? And I see the typing is happening quickly. Lots of direct service answers going on there. Yep. Someone heard Nintendo DS. I particularly enjoyed that. I think I saw that go by quickly. Yep, direct service. Great. Thank you guys. Yeah, keep your answers going in. We will jump to the official answer, if you will, and you are all correct. Those of you who identify direct service, obviously, right? It's that whole providing tangible assistance to those in need. So it's handling food and giving it to people who are going to consume it. So that makes perfect sense. Now, so that's an example of direct service. In contrast, a capacity building project or capacity building activities in this type of scenario could be working to improve the program, right? So work to improve at the organizational level, improve the delivery program itself, creating policies and procedures for the volunteers who are delivering the meals, developing partnerships to help identify volunteers or help deliver those meals. So it's not the service itself necessarily that is the direct service, but it's the actual act, if that makes sense.
Great. So how about teaching a financial literacy course to low-income individuals? Is that capacity building or direct service? And we'll give it a second for these answers to come in. So again, teaching a financial literacy course to low-income individuals. See a lot of DS, a bit of both. Couldn't see who mentioned that, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Direct, couple capacities. So,
City.
yeah, that's a good run right there.
Depends, yeah.
Okay, please keep them coming in. It does look like majority direct service. We will say the answer is direct service in this case. And that's because this example involves hands-on educating individuals. And in contrast, so if it were capacity building for a VISTA, that would be something like developing the curriculum for the financial literacy course, or connecting with other organizations who then can refer clients to take the course, or identifying financial literacy experts in the area maybe to advise the curriculum development.
Great, thank you. Okay, so here is our last example. And for this one, just what do you guys think, what type of activity is organizing a fundraiser? Is it capacity building or direct service? Lots of answers going in there, lots of C's and B's. Yep, CB, I see a couple direct service answers as well. Yep, keep them coming, depends, sure. Got it. Yeah, I do, just as you guys are answering, I do want to note, these are obviously super simple examples, and the service activities in your VISTA assignment description or in other VISTA assignment descriptions are going to be a lot more nuanced, right? For this activity, we're really just trying to draw broad strokes, and we will talk in just a second about a little bit of the nuance and how that could look. All right, final answers, pencils down. Okay, the answer that we have for you is that this is capacity building, as a number of folks identified, because much like the example with recruiting the volunteers to build the houses, right? That the volunteers are the resource that the VISTA is generating to support the organizational capacity here. Obviously, the resource being generated is actual cash. It could be, I'm interpreting this simple example to be a cash fundraiser. It could be an in-kind fundraiser as well. So I want to thank you guys for all of that. I think, as we said, super quick, hopefully meant to be simple. But it is, you know, some of the comments that you put in the chat really underscore why we do want to elevate this topic in today's webinar, why we want to take your time on your first day to really get a sense for you and make sure that you can kind of quickly gather and quickly determine if something is capacity building or direct service. And if you can't, then let's ask some questions, let's get some more information, right? So we want you to make sure that you have a good sense of that as we move forward. We want you to make sure you have a good distinction between these two concepts.
Great. So after that activity, we're just looking back at our agenda on this slide. And so far, we've reviewed some of the really important aspects of the VISTA program to help you build out your understanding and ability to answer the what is VISTA question. And next up, we'll quickly discuss the elements of your new VISTA member orientation process. So quickly, here's another quick look at the structure of your VISTA member orientation, or VMO for the acronym. As we discussed last week, there are 3 phases, and I'm happy to see everyone on this webinar here, their first day of service at their project site. And as a reminder, this structure is also reflected in that VISTA member orientation checklist. We emailed that out for the prior webinar. There's also a link to that checklist in the helpful links document that was emailed to you this morning in that email. So that VMO checklist is helpful. It's always good to double check, kind of see where you're at, what resources might be available to you throughout these, especially these first couple weeks of your service. So if you haven't already, we encourage you to either print or save that VMO checklist and just kind of keep it close at hand these first couple weeks. You can use it to record your progress through each phase of the orientation and as you complete important tasks over the next few weeks.
All right, so thinking about that, thinking about those important tasks for you to complete over the next few weeks, you guys know on last week's webinar we briefly mentioned the criminal history checks and the fingerprinting and some of the work around that, and we said we'll go into more detail today, and that's what we are about to do. So as you know, getting yourself fingerprinted and submitting those for a criminal history check is a big to-do item on your orientation checklist. We also mentioned last week, and just a reminder, we will ask you to send in those fingerprints to our headquarters so that we can run a background check as part of the VISTA program overall. So let's talk about how to do that. First of all, hopefully, your supervisor has or had a fingerprint kit for you there at your site when you arrive today. In that kit, it should be just a large envelope that has 2 fingerprint cards, which is just 2 kind of heavy stock pieces of paper, a simple disclosure form, which is just a page or 2, as well as a few pages of written instructions for how to complete this. So the kit itself is not a huge box that you have to get. It's really just a fairly slim envelope, but it's got important information in it. Included in that envelope, you should also have a label for UPS so that you can send in, at no cost to you, send in those fingerprint cards to our headquarters. So hopefully, as I said, that information is in your hands, or you've been given information from your site about it. So with that, those documents in your hand and that information in your mind, you are responsible for getting yourself fingerprinted and then getting those back to headquarters here. You can get yourself fingerprinted in any number of ways, and this really does vary depending on where you live in the country. So we at VISTA don't have a set instruction for how to get yourself fingerprinted. It really is localized. We know that some VISTAs are able to go to a local police station, that's a feature folks will offer, a sheriff's department. There may be a private company that does fingerprinting as part of just routine background checking. And the thing that you'll need to determine for yourself, depending on where you live, is what is the most accessible for you, the quickest that you can get to and the easiest you can get to. And you'll need to take those hard copy, those heavy stock fingerprint kits with you when you go to that location. This is really an important piece, I think, that isn't necessarily highlighted on the slide, so I want to make sure that I say it clearly, and that is that the fingerprints that you collect, these are ink, actual live fingerprints from your hands to this piece of paper. Those have to be submitted on the card that you receive directly from VISTA, and they have to be mailed back to VISTA. So there really is a bit of variety in how fingerprints are done around the world, but for our purposes, there is no variety. We have fingerprint cards. Those are the things that you need to use. So I want to make sure that you know that. We cannot accept electronic fingerprints. I know that's a thing in some places. We need the actual hard copy prints. So depending on where you are and the resource available to you, there may be a cost associated with getting fingerprinted. To offset that, VISTA does provide a $25 subsidy to all members, and that $25 will be included in your first living allowance. So good to know that you don't have to do anything. The extra little bit of cash is going to show up for you to help offset that cost. You do have 30 days, so 30 days from today, to get your fingerprints and get them into HQ, right? So it's the whole, you get them done and we receive them here at HQ within 30 days. Want to encourage you to try to figure this out for yourself as quickly as you can this week. Try not to put it off. Because to get your fingerprints, we have to have them by February 20th, as you can see on the slide. It is a really big deal if we don't get these fingerprints by this deadline. That's why there's a 30-day window. We have to have this information. If we don't get them, we might have to put your position in frozen or suspended status. It may be terminated. There are pretty serious consequences, and we absolutely do not want that to happen. So if for some reason, so as I said, please get your materials and get thinking about this week. If there are other VISTAs at your site or in your area, there may be VISTA leaders. They may have some good intel for you about how to get this done. So definitely worth your time to reach out. If for some reason, after hearing all this and being into your project today, you or your supervisor don't have those fingerprint kits or the shipping labels that I mentioned a moment ago, then your supervisor, right, your sponsoring organization should reach out to their CNCS contact immediately. And so for some of you, that could mean a CNCS state office. For others, it could mean a regional office. Whoever, again, whatever place you are in the country and whatever structure you have, just make sure that your supervisor reaches out to get those fingerprint kits. All right, I get to continue to harangue you about the fingerprints. So that's all the front end, right? Getting the kits and the cards, getting yourself inked, and then have those submitted. The second part of this, the other part of this process, is for our staff, obviously, to submit your fingerprints to the FBI, to receive the results on those fingerprints, and then compare the results that we received to what you disclosed on your AmeriCorps VISTA application. You may recall when you applied that you were asked as part of your VISTA application if you had ever been convicted of a crime. So it's possible, for whatever reason, that you did not disclose something that is going to show up when we run your criminal history check. It could be that you weren't clear if something about how something may have been dispensed with in the courts, whether or not that should have been reported, so you didn't report it. Maybe you thought a minor traffic violation would not need to be reported, or there was some activity that occurred when you were a minor and you thought that record was expunged, right? All kinds of life situations, all kinds of reasons for why you may have left something off your VISTA application. We definitely understand that. Now, though, is the time to make that right and to really correct the situation in the event that something was left off. So if for some reason you did not disclose the situation, as I said, that we're going to determine when we run the criminal history check, we're going to ask you to complete the criminal history questionnaire, and that's one of the small, simple forms that you'll find in your kit. And we'll ask you to give all of the information requested there regarding your particular situation. And then you'll submit that form along with your fingerprints as well. So once we get the questionnaire from you, we have your background check completed and results are in our hands, our staff will then compare these results, right? They're going to compare with what the FBI tells us and what you've told us, either on your application or on a disclosure form. So if for some reason, if everything aligns and there's no discrepancies or differences, you won't hear from VISTA. It'll just be a task that's completed behind the scenes. It is common, I would say, that a minor offense, something that's come up in the past that's not at all related to your VISTA assignment, generally won't bar you from service, just because there's been something, or there may be something in your report. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be removed from your VISTA service, and overwhelmingly that's not our approach, right? The thing that is really important, though, and that could cause some difficulty, is if we do find some information in the background check that you have not disclosed. And so if that occurs, our staff will have extensive follow-up with you and your supervisor. We'll have to look at this in kind of a project level, project management issue. Depending on whatever the results are, it is possible that your position may be terminated. So I just want to acknowledge, again, that is very uncommon. First of all, this isn't, what's typical for us, I would say, is that there may be minor differences. People do disclose things later that weren't on the applications, and we work that through. That's our work. That's part of our process to support you. But there are pretty serious situations, and we want to make sure that we are always being thoughtful and we're always erring on the side of caution. So when you're looking at your application and thinking about this criminal history questionnaire, please, please, please share more, share everything. Try not to hold anything back. Be very upfront so that you can feel like you're getting all the information, and we can make sure that we're with you and that we're being able to support this process and support you.
Great. So let's talk about some important issues that you learned about in the Civil Rights and Responsibilities course on the VISTA campus. The VISTA program takes very seriously the issues of discrimination and harassment. So we want to make sure you're all aware of what your rights are, as well as your responsibilities. As you learned, discrimination is when receiving treatment that is different because of a difference in sex, race, or any other protected class. Harassment is behavior that is severe or pervasive and creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment. If you believe that you have experienced or witnessed discrimination or harassment, and if you feel safe and comfortable doing so, here are the steps that you should take. Approach and talk directly to the person you suspect of engaging in harassing or discriminating behavior. If that doesn't work, or if you do not feel safe and comfortable doing so, you should talk to your VISTA supervisor. If you cannot go to your supervisor, or you do and the matter is not resolved to your satisfaction, you should contact your CNCS state or regional office. Finally, if you still don't have the answer you need, you can contact the CNCS Equal Opportunity Program, or EOP. Rights go hand in hand with responsibilities. So while you have the right to a service experience that is free from harassment and discrimination, you also have the responsibility not to subject anyone to harassment or discrimination. So please be conscious of how your words and actions might be perceived by others, whether fellow VISTAs, staff at your site, or community members. And as a reminder, the contact information that you could see at the bottom of this slide right here is included in the handout for this session. You can also find this at any time in the VISTA Member Handbook. That VISTA Member Handbook is on the VISTA campus. It's under the Member section. There's a link that's on the left-hand side. You can access that VISTA Member Handbook, or you could just search for it on the VISTA campus as well. You can find this contact information at any time if you need that. And AmeriCorps VISTA is a federal program, and like anything supported by taxpayer funds, we need to ensure that the program is well run, doing what it's supposed to, and spending money wisely. And like all federal agencies, CNCS has an Inspector General whose office is responsible for preventing and detecting waste, fraud, and abuse. Most VISTA sponsors are familiar with the rules around allowable service activities and those that are prohibited, and it is important for all of us to pay a close attention to those. There are a few red flags to be aware of. If you are being asked to take over the work of a staff person, say someone who is out on extended leave, that is considered replacing staff and is not allowed. Or if most of what you're doing is administrative support for someone else, that's also not appropriate work for a VISTA member. You should be focusing on the things outlined in your VAD, which ties directly to the overall project plan that was approved by CNCS. And finally, tying into those activities that we just did, the majority of your work should be capacity building, not direct service. So keep this in mind throughout your VISTA year, but also especially during these first couple of weeks as you go over your VAD with your supervisor and kind of plan out your year. From your coursework and today's activities, you should have a good idea how to distinguish between capacity building and direct service. But again, as Barbara mentioned, for example, those activities we just did, they were kind of cut and dry, pretty straightforward in those examples. And sometimes, maybe there is a gray area. And just as Barbara mentioned, if you have a question, feel free to reach out and ask, either to your supervisor or your CNCS or state regional office. That's what they're there for, to help clarify if there are any gray areas. So if you feel you are being asked to do things that are not appropriate for VISTA members, the first step we recommend is speak with your supervisor. From there, CNCS state or regional office. And again, you can reach them by the first two initials, the initials of your state at cns.gov. So the example we gave last week, Texas, is TX at cns.gov. My home state of North Carolina, NC at cns.gov. And if the issue isn't resolved, or if you want to remain anonymous, you can contact the CNCS Office of Inspector General with the information you see on that last slide. is also, again, in the helpful links, if you weren't able to jot that down. Oh, here it is. Kim brought it back up. Thanks, Kim. At the bottom of that slide, you see the Office Inspector General, similar to the previous slide as well. This can be found in the VISTA Member Handbook at any point throughout your year of service. Great. So now let's take another look at the in-service phase of your VISTA Member Orientation, or VMO. As we've discussed, you'll start working on your fingerprint submission as soon as possible this week and submit your information by that deadline date that you saw, that Thursday, February 20th. In addition, starting today, you are having your on-site orientation and training, or another acronym, OSOT, which is led by your supervisor and project sites. And finally, there are 7 courses that we ask all VISTAs to complete early in their service. Now, these courses are self-directed and intended to help you start strong in your project. We're not collecting them, but they are helpful. So these courses include what you see on the screen, a guide to help you make the most of your OSOT, or on-site orientation and training. There's a minute intro exercise, which helps you clearly and succinctly explain to others who you are and what you are doing as a VISTA. Super helpful, because sometimes it is tough to explain what you're doing, because when you're fighting poverty, the situations can get complicated and difficult to explain in a minute. So that's really a really helpful exercise. There's also a resource on theories of change that looks at various ideas about what causes poverty and theories on how to reduce or eliminate it. There's a great video explaining how poverty is measured in the United States. There is a worksheet to help you unpack your VISTA assignment description, or VAD, and use it as the foundation for your work plan for the year. We have a tutorial on how to understand the community you are serving by looking at demographic data and research. And also there's a powerful video that shares 13 lessons about poverty that came out of the VISTA program. These worksheets really dovetail nicely with your on-site orientation and training, and they can provide structure for the first few meetings with your supervisor. Again, we're not collecting them, they're for your self-improvement.
All right. Next, let's turn our attention to your specific service and the document that rules it all. So one ring to rule them all. That is the VISTA assignment description, or the VAD, as Chris said. That's our fun acronym for the description. So as we discussed on last week's webinar, each VISTA around the country, has a VISTA assignment description. That document, the VAD, was created by your project. So it was written, the actual content that's in there was written by someone at your organization, someone who's still there, or it could have been a former staff member as well. It's possible you have received your VAD as part of your interview when you're first considering joining VISTA and becoming a VISTA at your project. You may have received your VAD today, or you may have looked for the first time your VAD today. In whatever way, we hope that you have the VAD pretty close at hand, at your fingertips or near your eyeballs. If for some reason you have not yet done that, if you have not yet got your VISTA assignment description, you can also access it in the MyAmeriCorps portal. It is loaded up in there for everyone, so you can access that at any time if you haven't already. So all VISTA assignment descriptions include these 3 elements, right? The project goal, the objectives, and the member activities. Pretty straightforward. The project goal should be related to or identical to the overall goal of your VISTA project, right? This is the kind of high-level VISTA project goal. Next up, the objectives describe what you will achieve by the end of your service year. They serve as a bridge between that overarching project goal to the specific activities of your VISTA member service. And those member activities, the third part of the VAD, should specify or begin to specify what you'll be doing this year. Collectively, these individual activities will add up to your objectives, and then from there you should be able to see your overarching project goal. Now, the VISTA assignment description is a starting point for you with your supervisor and the folks at your project to develop an actual detailed a real living work plan for the year. Again, I would just want to emphasize the VAD is a starting point, and it's important, if you haven't already, to digest what's in the VAD, make sure that you fully understand it, and that you use it to develop that work plan for the year. Really, if you haven't already today, and it didn't look to me in the chat like you guys have done this yet today, but hopefully within the next week or two, you will spend some focus time with your supervisor on your current VAD, what's in there, what it means, how, if anything has changed since it was written, and that together with your supervisor, you really keep that in mind as you are completing your work plan and then really moving through your service year. Chris mentioned earlier there is a worksheet, a pretty straightforward, you can see a bit of it on the slide now, to help you digest your VAD a little bit if that would be useful. You may have already seen that as part of your early service coursework. It can provide a nice framework for you and your supervisor to discuss your tasks step by step. So again, I just want to draw your attention to that and encourage you to use that as you start working with your supervisor on your VAD.
So we'd like to hear from you all again, and based on what you know about your VAD, your VISTA assignment description, with the activities, the objectives, the goal, what will you be doing as a VISTA? What steps, what tasks or activities will you be doing to help eradicate poverty or build capacity in your community and in your organization? So we ask that you please type your answer in the chat, and again, be sure to select all panelists and attendees when you toggle that so that everyone can view this, because this is a good part. I know Barbara and I really enjoy this, where we get to see what you all are doing out in the country. With close to 300 of you, it's very inspiring to see these. So it looks like the first few are coming in. I think my computer is lagging a bit, but I could see them coming. Creating a volunteer engagement system.
Yes, grant writing.
Teaching music to 181 students. Recruiting volunteers. Habitat.
Creating databases. I saw a couple of folks.
Yeah. Please keep these coming in. We're looking at them. I'm going to give it another few seconds so everyone gets a chance. And again, you know, when we ask you, what are you going to be doing as a VISTA, you're looking at your VAD that's complete with all these activities. It's kind of hard to type that in a short, concise, little short phrase in the chats, but, and that kind of coincides with what we were mentioning earlier about that minute intro as a VISTA. That's a good activity that you can use to kind of explain to people what you're doing as a VISTA. So yes, please keep these coming in. We sincerely appreciate seeing this and seeing the work that everyone is doing as these answers come in. It helps remind us of the goals and mission of VISTA and what everyone really is doing, getting out there in the country and in the communities. So with those wonderful things being mentioned in the chat, we want to actually take this discussion a tiny bit further and talk about what happens as a result of your service. So what happens as a result of those activities that you're mentioning right now, what it is you're doing as a VISTA, what will be the result? So for example, what if you plan a community meeting? If you bring people together around let's say a common issue, what is the impact of that activity?
What if you are one of the folks that typed in grant writer? What if you write those grants? How will writing them actually make a difference in your community?
Or what if you recruit volunteers? So why specifically is it important to have other people help with your project?
And for those of you who identify curriculum development, what if as part of your VISTA assignment you are writing a lesson plan? What purpose would that lesson plan achieve, and how would it impact others within your community? So that's a big question, right? And we definitely aren't expecting you to answer the what if questions in the chat. But I think it is a really nice companion question to the kind of businessy discussion we were having a moment ago, right? Which is, what are you doing? What are the activities that you're doing? And we ask this what if question because we really want you to reflect on why you're serving. what are the bigger impacts or the bigger changes that you're hoping to make. We think taking the time to think about the reasons behind your activities and the purpose of the things that you're doing, we hope that will help you understand the greater good, and also hope you stay focused on your intended impact as you jump into your VISTA service. For each of you, I really want to encourage you to think about that what if question when answering the one that's on the slide in front of you. And this one we actually do want to see some answers in the chat. And that is, if you and when you succeed in your service, what will happen in your community, right? So what are the visible, tangible changes, improvements, or impacts that you will see? And by this we mean, again, that end result rather than what your day-to-day activities will look like. So what's going to happen in your community when you're successful? And I'm seeing some comments go in there. Yep, safer and more empowered LGBTQ members of the community. Yep, community members are more engaged.
More served. More
people served, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Better parenting support for young mothers, I think I saw that go up. Helping with homelessness, it looked like in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Again, this is another part that I really appreciate seeing these answers that everyone's sending in. It's really, really cool to see.
Yep. Absolutely. Business, economic development in different communities to help lift people up, help try to fight some of the negative effects and some of the realities of living in poverty. Dealing with opioid addiction and what that means. Yep, absolutely.
Fewer people living on the streets in that community.
Yeah.
The fight on depression.
Yep. Helping people in school, K-12 as well as post-secondary. Your community is going to be safer, going to feel safer and be safer. Yep, great. Thank you for those. Yeah, and please, as Chris said, if the chat is, it may be a bit of a lag because many people are typing, please keep typing in. We want to see those in there. As he said, and just to echo, we love to see your answers to this question and to, even for just these few minutes, just think about the answers to these, because this is why we're in the service business, right? This is what we're looking to do. And I think it can be really inspiring to look even at these brief words and the few minutes that we have together. And we hope that keeping this in mind for yourself, so keeping these intended outcomes in the front of your mind, and maybe some of the ones you're reading from your colleagues as well, that will help inspire you as you move, as you get into your VISTA year and as you move through your VISTA year, as we move forward.
And with all those great outcomes and activities and projects and communities in mind, we are going to move forward with the oath of service to make you official VISTAs. So with those answers coming in that we certainly appreciate of what might happen, you can also get an idea of, those answers are coming from different VISTAs starting at different projects throughout the country this year. We're all located in different communities. There are about just over 275 VISTAs starting today. It's a good amount. Barbara and I are here in DC, and you can see almost most states and regions are represented. It's all throughout the country. So imagine, if you will, when we go through the oath of service, that all of your faces are on screen, and taking the oath together, you're all doing this as one. So let's discuss the oath of service before, just kind of go over a few details before taking it. So the oath of service is a required and important step in becoming a VISTA member, and because of its importance, we are actually going to pause the chat to focus strictly on the oath. If you have any questions at this time, of course, you can still type those in the Q&A section. Please feel free to continue to do so, and our team will either answer them as soon as we can or hold them for the end of the webinar.
All right, so to document the oath taking today, we have just a really short form that we'll ask you to complete in the MyAmeriCorps portal after we log off today. So good to know that this is a super short process, and I have just a few quick instructions to help you complete that short form really quickly and accurately. So first of all, most important, this form is not going to be available to you until after we log off. So we're giving you the instructions now. Please take them down in whatever way is most useful for you. And then about 15 minutes after our webinar ends today, you should be able to go into the portal and access this form. You may also see an alert, an announcement that comes to you via email that says, hey, my oath form is available. So next up, I'm going to, as I said, just give you the quick instructions for how to fill out this super simple form. I'm feeling bad having to linger on this for time, but honestly, it's so important that we get this done perfectly, that all of you guys get this done absolutely perfectly today. That's why we're emphasizing it. So please bear with us. It is a very big deal if this simple form gets submitted incorrectly. So here we go. We're going to go through these instructions. So you can see on the slide in front of you now the form that the fields that you will have to complete are very, very few. You are going to quickly go through the different instructions. You can take a screenshot of this if you want on your computer. You can take a photo on your phone, whatever makes the most sense for you. But here are the instructions for completing the oath now. All right. First of all, for the date of your first day of service at your project site, as you can see, that is the top line of the oath form. It's going to be today, January 21st, 2020. The name of the CNCS official who administered and witnessed your oath, enter Chris Hawks, and you can see Chris's name on the screen. His last name is H-A-W-K-E-S, Hawkes. Just make sure that spelling is correct. In the next field, the electronic signature field, you will type in your full legal name. And just as a heads up, this name that you insert here should match the name that's on your VISTA application, right? So it's the name that's currently in the portal for you is the name that you'll need to type into your electronic signature. Underneath that, you're going to click the little box that says, by checking this box and typing my name above, I am electronically signing this. And then you'll click submit. So super, super simple instructions, as I said, really straightforward. I hope you agree. But just want to make sure that these instructions are easy for you, clear, and you can get it done super fast. We also, you can see the step-by-step posted in the chat when we come back together.
Great. And now that the logistics of the oath are out of the way, let's consider the oath and the oath that you're about to take, which is the same oath taken by all federal employees up to and including the Vice President, whereas the President's oath is slightly different. In the oath, it includes the phrase, to defend the Constitution of the United States. So looking at the word defend, this is not a call to arms. For some, in some positions, it may be. But for most of us, defense of the Constitution may be just the opposite of using arms. We're pledging to defend the document that contains our civil rights. It also includes the phrase, against all enemies. So looking at the word enemies. In the context of VISTA, the enemy is poverty. Here on this screen, you can see the original oath on the left, along with an alternative version on the right side of the screen. The alternative provides two changes that you may prefer, if you wish. One of those is you may replace the word swear with the word affirm, if you so choose. And you may omit the phrase, so help me God, at the end of the oath, if you'd like. And we want to recognize that since we're all in different locations around the country, we're scattered in so many sites, so many projects, and so many different locations that we don't have the benefit of really hearing each other's voices on this webinar as we all recite this. But again, as we looked at that map, we saw everyone's answers in the chats. We know everyone, over 275 VISTAs starting today. It's pretty cool to know that you're taking the oath with those 275 other VISTAs. Same thing at the same time all across America. So it may seem a little awkward to recite the oath aloud if you happen to be alone in a room right now. Some of you might be with other VISTAs starting at your same project. Others might be alone. But please remember that we are all right here with you during this. So with all that being said, we ask you to please raise your right hand and recite the oath aloud along with me. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. So, yay! You are all now VISTA members, and congratulations on joining the newest group of AmeriCorps VISTA. So congrats. We're so happy. We're stoked. 276 more out there fighting poverty. And so for this oath form, here's a screenshot again of what it will look like. As Barbara mentioned, it won't look like it right now, 15 minutes after this webinar. So we're looking at 4:45 Eastern time, 4:45 p.m. Eastern time. Although, so we often get questions about where I don't see this, but this is just a screenshot of what it will look like in your My AmeriCorps account. You'll get a link on the left-hand side. And as a reminder, that oath form must be submitted with the correct information by the end of the day today, by midnight tonight, basically. And again, as Barbara mentioned, pretty straightforward, but we just want to show you the details that you'll need to include on the oath. Straightforward, today's date as your start date. My name, as Barbara was nice to point out, it's Chris Hawks. It's not Hawkeys or Hawkes. I don't put the French or Italian accent on it. So it's Hawks with an E. And so you may want to either jot it down and take a screenshot or just snap a photo just so that you have this info if you can't remember the spelling. And then again, you use your name that's in My AmeriCorps so that it matches what was on your application to become a VISTA. Check the box to constitute the e-signature as a legal signature on the oath form and submit it by midnight tonight. Please note, one note is that you will not get a response that confirms submission of the oath form, but you will be able to see the submitted oath in your My AmeriCorps account. So as soon as you submit it, you'll see that it's submitted. If, maybe there's an internet issue, you hit submit and it times out or something, you can go back in and just click that link and it should either show that it's submitted with a date stamp, or if it doesn't show anything, you might have to resubmit it. But although you won't get a response confirming submission, the VISTA Member Support Unit, or VMSU, will contact you if we do not receive your oath form or if any corrections are needed. So basically, no news is good news. But if you hear from the VMSU, you'll either have to submit it or make a correction.
Great. Thank you for taking the oath, everybody. All right. So with you now, officially sworn in and just on the brink of getting the oath form official, we just have a couple more important agenda items to cover quickly before we bid you farewell today. So as a reminder, I want to talk just a little bit about resources. There's a bunch on the VISTA campus. There are a number of features that are designed specifically to help you guys connect with each other. So I know we mentioned this last week in the kind of flurry of getting started. You may not have checked it out yet, but you can see on the screen in front of you, there are two features in particular. There are VISTA forums, which are areas for chatting about all things VISTA, as well as a map. So you can see folks serving around the country. As you're getting settled in, as I said, if you haven't already, please just make a note to check these out. We know that they're really helpful for you. Also, as you're getting settled in just a few short weeks, along with all of the other reminders and follow-ups and bits that we have with you guys, you'll also receive communication about how to access VISTA gear, so how to access material that you can wear and you can use to identify yourself with the VISTA program. So I think one of the greatest things about being an AmeriCorps, frankly, is the AmeriPride, and showing off your VISTA pride is something we hope that you'll be interested in doing. We know for sure, I've had this experience myself wearing my AmeriCorps sweatshirt, like you never know when you're going to come across a fellow AmeriCorps member or an alum, and so it can be really helpful for you as you're getting into your project. So in addition to the gear, we also want to encourage you, as you're getting yourself set up, to add the VISTA logo to any business cards if you have them, if you get them printed, or if you make them. If you have an email signature for your business correspondence, please add the AmeriCorps VISTA name and our logo. If you have a website that gives your bio or talks about your project, please include AmeriCorps VISTA just to identify yourself and promote the service that you're doing. We really think the more visible you are, again, as appropriate within your project and in your community, the more support that you may be able to get, either personally for yourself as a member serving, and also for your project as well. So, being able to identify other VISTAs is a great benefit, we think, of engaging in this kind of work. So Chris mentioned the helpful links handout that he emailed to folks. In that document, there are links to templates for some of the bits that I just mentioned, including the business card template, the publication, the logos, how to get that material from headquarters here and then use it for your own purposes. I did mention you will receive via email instructions in just a few weeks. It is a bit of a delayed process to allow you to get yourself oriented and settled at your site. And then you'll receive an email about how to request free gear that says VISTA, if you free branded VISTA gear, if you're interested. You can, if you would like, request a polo, a lapel pin, a tote bag, a t-shirt, a water bottle, and a journal. All of those things would be very alluring, VISTA logo on them for your use. You absolutely do not have to do this, but I think it's kind of cool, as I said, to get some free stuff. You'll get those ordering instructions via email. It's just an online request process, and then the gear will come to you, as I said, in a few weeks to the address that you have. And then the last thing I would just note here is as you're getting yourself oriented and getting into your project, please consider sharing your photos. If you take photos as part of your official business, share them, tag them. We really love to see what you're doing and read about what you're doing here at headquarters. We would love to retweet your material and really help amplify the activities that you're engaged in. So please keep that in mind as you're getting into your service, into your activities, and of course where it's appropriate. We know some projects, photos and other promotional words may not be appropriate, but where it is, please send it.
Definitely. And moving on, so again, just another quick look at that resource list you received. You received this last week as an attachment, and again, it's a link that's available in the helpful links document, and it's always available on the VISTA campus on the Starting VISTA page. We just want to point it out again because as you go through your service, if you have questions about sick leave or healthcare benefits, pay schedule, or policy, this resource and contacts list points you in the right direction. So for benefits questions, you can also contact the benefits administrator directly as indicated on the contact sheet. It's a really good sheet to have. If you want to just, either save it to your desktop or print out a copy so that you have it, or just know that it's always on the VISTA campus, Starting VISTA page. And looking a little further ahead as you settle into your VISTA year, please be on the lookout for networks of current AmeriCorps members and alumni in your area. They may be organized by AmeriCorps programs or state commissions, and you can find contacts at AmeriCorpsAlums.org. Along with building your AmeriCorps network, there will also be a number of training opportunities this year to help you continue to develop professionally. Our VISTA training unit staff deliver a series of monthly webinars for VISTA members, VISTA leaders, project supervisors, and new sponsor staff that you can be on the lookout for. VISTA headquarters also provides regionally based in-service trainings for members early in their service years. In-service trainings, or we'll throw out another acronym, IST, IST for in-service training, addresses common training needs among VISTA members. It provides an environment for VISTA members to discuss their projects and ask questions in person, and offers a forum for VISTAs to really connect with their peers, with other VISTAs. You will be notified of an IST opportunity very shortly, likely at the very end of this week, if not Friday, Monday. So look out for this email shortly to come to the email address that you have on file in My AmeriCorps to invite you to apply to attend. These trainings are optional to members. They aren't required. But you'll only have one opportunity to apply to attend, so please keep that in mind. VISTA, for these trainings, VISTA arranges your travel, your hotel, and meals during the training, and it's 3.5 days. All 3.5, or really 4 days, count as regular days of service, so there's no, you don't need to take any personal leave days to attend. It all counts as your regular VISTA service. So again, as you go over your VISTA assignment description with your supervisor and start working on your first task, you can start to begin thinking of potential areas of training needs and where IST may be beneficial for you. And also, in addition to the in-service trainings led by VISTA headquarters, some sponsors actually receive funds to host local in-service trainings for their VISTA members, and sometimes for other members in projects in the same city or state. So if that's the case for your project, your supervisor will be contacted if there are any trainings that are applicable that might work in that scenario. So we're getting towards the end, and we'd ask that you please take a few moments to give us a feedback on the webinar. We are constantly reviewing this. Again, we take your comments and your feedback on these evaluations very seriously, and we do look at them to help improve future webinars. So we ask that you please just take a couple moments to complete the brief survey. Shouldn't take too long, and we certainly thank you for all the feedback that you provide. And while doing that, next we're going to take a few moments to go over the answers to some of your questions that we see coming in. So we're on the Q&A portion. So Barbara, have you seen any specific questions come in?
So yeah, I've seen the Q&A that a lot of folks have been typing in questions, and Brittany and Khadija have been fast and furiously answering them. There seems to me, when I was looking at the list, a couple of frequent questions, so I just thought I'd raise those. The first one is regarding that disclosure form on the criminal history disclosure form that we were discussing a few minutes ago as part of your fingerprinting and your background checking. So I don't want to be specific, but a number of people asked, what if I have some type of issue, and they listed the issue in the Q&A, should I disclose that? And so I just want to say universally that if you are wondering, if you're not sure whether or not a particular situation is going to be reflected in your criminal history check, please do go ahead and disclose it, right? It is always in your interest to overshare in this process, and it is not at all in your interest to undershare. So a global answer to questions that end with, should I put this on my disclosure form? My global answer to that is yes. There were a flurry of questions around the fingerprinting. A couple of folks noted that they've recently been fingerprinted elsewhere. At least from what I could glean from the questions, I don't think they were former VISTA members. Chris, I think I know the answer to that. I want to make sure I'm
yeah, I think I saw a couple of questions there too, and it may depend on the situation. But for first-year VISTA members, for example, I think someone said they had their fingerprints with State National. If that's the case, VISTA's program, we aren't able to access those, so you would have to redo your fingerprints for VISTA, for the VISTA program. And that's the case if you've done it for any other programs out there. If you've done them recently, VISTA isn't able to access those, so you have to redo those for the VISTA program. Now, the only scenario we're not, and I don't know if there's anyone starting today who has ended their service within another year. This is their second year of VISTA service, for example, and they're starting back up after ending within 90 days of their last year. In that case, you likely won't have to, and you can always double check either with myself with your supervisor or state office if there's any, if you're not sure if it's been 90 days or not, but otherwise, almost everyone has to submit those fingerprints. I did see another couple of questions on fingerprints, and I think Barbara, you mentioned it, but just to reiterate, to clarify, if you don't have a fingerprint kit, if you ask your supervisor for it and they're like, what are you talking about? You should have it. They should have been made aware. If for any reason you don't have that fingerprint kit at site, have your supervisor contact your state or regional office, that program officer, and they'll get one to you as soon as possible. And that's the same with the UPS label. I think someone mentioned they have the kit, but not the UPS label. If that's the case, again, have your supervisor contact the state or regional office, and they can get you the UPS label very quick. They can get you that electronically.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of variations on what if my supervisor didn't have my kit, what if I'm missing something, who do I contact, how do I know who to contact? And I know you said this before, the state abbreviation, the North Carolina example you gave, the Texas example, that is a good tool, and it's definitely something for you to know and keep in mind with your supervisor. And if they know, if your supervisor has a specific human contact, like they could be called a program officer or a portfolio manager at CNCS, right? Those are the job titles of the human beings who are the contacts for this particular task. So that's something as well. You know, your supervisor may be new and they may not know the CNCS people either, and that is totally normal. But if they do know, or if they can find out who their human contact is, their portfolio manager or their program officer, that could also be helpful. So just to add that kind of layer of information gathering as well.
Yeah, good point. So I did see one other note on when will I have access to be able to submit forbearance requests. So yeah, that's a great question. So ideally by the end of the week, by like Friday, it's going to take some, this is assuming, you know, you submit your oath form after this webinar, everything's great, on time. It just takes a couple days for everything to process. And then ideally by Friday, possibly by Monday next week, you will have access, if you selected the Education Award, to submit a forbearance request if you so choose. You'll get an email from our healthcare provider. That'll probably come next week regarding signing up for either the healthcare allowance or the health benefit plan. You also have access to your service letters at that point, where you're currently serving VISTA member, if you need to show that service letter to anyone.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just going through a little bit more questions. There were definitely some, again, much like last week, some pretty personally specific questions that we unfortunately won't be able to answer, like things around your tax rate or your housing costs, just because we don't know all of the details. And I want to acknowledge that there may be questions you have along those lines that we aren't answering, and that's why, because it's just not information that we can access on your behalf right now. There were questions, it looks like we're hearing from our colleagues as well, Khadija and Brittany, questions about timesheets. I think folks were, which it does seem to be a common question we had not heard yet. Anything you're seeing about timesheets, Chris? I
did see one, and that's good to know, because that's a common question that we get, especially on this first day of service. So as far as VISTA headquarters goes, we track your number of days served. Your timesheets, that's all tracked at your project or site. So that's something you're going to want to bring up with your supervisor this week to ask and inquire about how those are submitted, because it'll be different at every project. They're going to use a different system. So all that is tracked there. And looking through to see if there's any others. Khadijah and Brittany have answered the majority. Is this webinar recorded and sent as well? It is recorded. Please reach out to me. You could just email me. You should have my email address, that's seahawks@cns.gov. If you would like a link to the recording, I should get that in a couple of days.
Great.
I think Khadijah and Brittany are wrapping up the rest of the questions that are in the Q&A pod, and we will move on. So thank everyone for the questions, for your participation throughout this webinar, and we certainly hope today's discussion helped you build some new connections maybe. We saw some in the chat, making a Facebook group so you can help stay connected. We love that and think it's a great idea, whoever initially set that up, a great job. We hope that we were able to clarify some of the complexity of starting your VISTA service and helped you know where to find information quickly. And of course, we have sworn you in as official VISTA members. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And before we depart, we want to leave you with another quote from President Lyndon Johnson. This was also shared at the launch of the VISTA program. On your idealism and on your success rests much of our hope for the final elimination of poverty in our American life. Thank you all so much for your participation today, and we wish you so much success during your year of service.